Installing and configuring a mobile iron appliance is a wizard-based process. Before you begin, be sure to download or view the online version of the on-premise installation guide. An outline of the steps in the installation process is seen here. The first requirement is to reserve all the resources that are required, whether that is server capacity for a virtual machine or access to the closet where an appliance is to be installed. Basically, you need to make sure that everything and everybody are in the right place at the right time with the resources you require in order to activate the appliance and put it into service. For an on-premise deployment, it is vital that the correct ports are opened at the corporate firewall prior to installing the appliance. If all the required ports are unopened in the required directions, then it is unlikely the appliance can be put into service. The Mobile Iron Technical Questionnaire spreadsheet provides a summary of the ports that must be opened, where they need to be opened, and in which direction. Also, in the Technical Questionnaire document is a checklist that you should complete before starting the install. The checklist helps to capture the technical details that you will require in order to install the appliance. The next step is to prepare the appliance for the installation. If it is a hardware appliance, it must be ordered, delivered, then installed in the rack in the correct closet or data center, and connected to the network. If it is a virtual machine appliance, then a hypervisor server with adequate capacity must be available for it. Having booted the appliance, the next step is to run through the system setup wizard at the appliance command line. This defines basic configuration settings, which enables it to be available on the corporate network. Log into the System Manager and Admin Portal web interfaces. After you are able to access the System Manager interface, you must configure basic settings, including a connection to an SMTP server to enable the appliance to generate system alerts. Note that this configuration is unrelated to the end-user email configuration. It is optional to adjust the default values for the various Mobile Iron service ports. If you change the default ports, the new ports must be opened at the corporate firewall. There are a number of items that must be configured at the Admin Portal interface. For example, installing the iOS MDM certificate from the Apple Push Services portal to enable effective management of iOS devices. Although it is possible to define local users on Core, many customers integrate with their back-end LDAP directory. This is a more scalable and easier way to manage numerous users. Lastly, to enable more effective and responsive access control to corporate resources, install at least one Sentry appliance. The installation of a Sentry appliance is a subset of the steps shown for Core. There is very little need to access the System Manager interface on Sentry. It can be brought into service and configured from the Core appliance. The Mobile Iron On-Premise Installation Guide, which is available on the Community Portal site, is an extremely useful document. In preparation for a deployment, there are two purposes for this document. First, it can be used to capture from the customer all the details of their infrastructure and the planned scope of their Mobile Iron implementation. It includes several checklists which can be used to collect important information about the customer, its network, and the Mobile Iron deployment soon to happen. Mobile Iron recommends to our reseller partners that they maintain a copy of this document for each of their Mobile Iron customers to ensure that all pertinent details are captured and maintained on record. Secondly, it can be used to communicate to them the firewall port requirements in order to implement the Mobile Iron system. There is a deployment diagram that has the architecture for a Mobile Iron on-premise deployment. For more depth on the required ports and their purpose, consult the table with the recommendations for firewall rules. This indicates exactly which ports must be opened, where, in which direction, and what they are used for. The items that must be configured within the system setup wizard in order to bring up a Mobile Iron appliance should be captured in the checklist from the on-premise installation guide. The information required is the customer company name, a contact person name, and contact person email address to agree to and accept the end-user license agreement prior to installing the appliance. It is important to note that these details must be from the end user of the system, not the reseller or system integrator. The appliance IP addresses, subnet mask, and default gateways. You need to have both the public address and the private address on the DMZ subnet, the hostnet for the appliance. Note, this must be fully qualified domain name or FQDN of the appliance that resolves to its public IP address. The host name of core must also be externally published in order for devices to resolve it to a public IP address. The IP address or host name of at least one DNS server or multiple servers if they are available. A password for access to the CLI enable prompt. Note that as a best practice, this should be different from the admin user password. An admin username and password. Note that this user is created in both local user databases on a core appliance, that is in the System Manager and Admin portal, and is automatically assigned to the super user roles. This user also has access to the appliance CLI. You must decide whether CLI access should be possible, and if so, using what protocol, either Telnet, SSH, or both. Finally, decide how to set the appliance system time, either manually or by synchronizing with a NTP server. Note that as a system time is a critical system attribute, MobileIron recommends using the NTP option. Approximately only 5% of implementations are done with physical boxes, which are built by MobileIron and shipped to the customer. It is important that we provide this option for customers who may require it. The M2200 appliance can support up to 50,000 registered devices. The slide also provides details for the M2600 appliance, which supports up to 200,000 registered devices. Further details can also be found in the MobileIron on-premise installation guide document found in core documentation in the community portal. The more popular option of deploying MobileIron is through virtualization. You can deploy the MobileIron Core, MobileIron Sentry, Enterprise Connector, and MobileIron RDB appliances as virtual machines. The ISO packages, that is the image format for distribution of software, are available from the MobileIron support portal in the Software Download Center. VMware ESX or ESXi version 5.1 and later, or Hyper-V 2008 and later, are the only supported virtual environments. The virtual machine, or VM, also requires at least 1 gigabit Ethernet interface. When dimensioning the VM environment, you must assign resources depending on the number of registered devices expected. Guaranteed VM resource allocations are a requirement for CPU and for RAM. If you need to raise a support case with MobileIron for a VM appliance, one of the first things that is checked are the VM resources. Further details can also be found in the MobileIron on-premise installation guide document found in core documentation in the community portal. When setting up the VMware container, configure adequate resources on the Hardware tab and map the CD/DVD drive to the ISO file that you downloaded from the Support Download Center. Configure the CPU, memory, and hard disk settings to reflect appropriate requirements before starting up the instance. On the Options tab, specify that the guest operating system is Linux and select either CentOS 64-bit or Red Hat Enterprise Linux 64-bit.